As the sun slowly rises over the horizon, its first golden rays spill across the ancient landscape of Thebes. Tourists walking among the towering columns of Karnak today often pause to marvel at their sheer scale and intricacy. The pillars, carved with hieroglyphs and painted in colors that have faded over millennia, pierce the sky like prayers frozen in stone. A person stops, lifts a camera, and feels a profound awe. They are standing before a civilization that was once divine, magnificent, and all-powerful. And yet, what meets the eye, the splendor, the statues, the ceremonial grandeur, is only a fragment of the truth. Beneath these columns, hidden deep in the earth, in the lowest, darkest chamber of the Temple of Mut, a discovery was made in 1923 that stopped archaeologists in their tracks. It was neither gold nor a statue, nor a royal tomb that contained riches of unimaginable value. What was found was subtle, almost imperceptible. A small piece of limestone, deliberately hidden, with faint scratches barely visible even under lamplight. When examined carefully, it revealed a corridor that led nowhere. Its walls, covered in wet plaster, bore dozens of tiny handprints, children's hands pressed in as if they were desperately clinging to the surface, leaving behind an imprint of fear and hope. Beside these handprints, a single sentence was carved repeatedly, 17 times, in the informal hieratic script of ordinary people. Mut does not hear us. Mut, the mother goddess, guardian of children and protector of the innocent, was being invoked by these voices of the past. Yet, the children, who had been dedicated to her care, declared that she did not answer. What were they trying to tell us, nearly 3,000 years later? The priests of the time spoke of these girls as if they were blessed, chosen, divine. The official records, carved in polished stone, adorned with gold and lapis lazuli, echoed the same story. These were girls selected by the gods, living in sacred service. Their words were elegant, the narrative beautiful, but history has a cruel way of showing that beauty can mask horror. In 1923, British archaeologist Margaret Murray was excavating the basement of the Temple of Mut in Lexaw. Her work was methodical and, on the surface, mundane, cataloging pottery shards, measuring foundation stones, and inventorying storage rooms. Yet, behind a false wall, she discovered a sealed clay jar. Unremarkable to the casual eye, the jar was plain, undecorated, and deliberately hidden. This chamber had remained untouched for over 2 millennia. Inside the jar were 17 papyrus letters. When Murray attempted to show these letters to the Egyptian Antiquities Service, the jar was immediately confiscated. The contents were classified. 3 senior Egyptologists, men who had spent decades translating temple texts, refused to examine them. One noted in his diary, with visible unease, "Some truths are better left buried." The jar remained locked in a Cairo warehouse for 71 years. What could have been written that made scholars recoil? If you value documented history over comforting myths, this story is for you. The New Kingdom of Egypt, the golden age of the pharaohs, the height of power, the pinnacle of art, architecture, and intellectual achievement, is often portrayed as a civilization of grandeur and divine favor. But behind the majestic facades of Karnak and Luxor, behind the temples that tower over the Nile, lay a system that was simultaneously brilliant and brutal. Temples were not merely houses of worship. They were corporations, vast bureaucracies controlling wealth, land, labor, and the flow of everyday life. The Temple of Amun at Karnak alone managed 81,000 workers, over 421,000 cattle, 83 ships, and more land than the pharaoh himself. These figures come directly from the Wilbur Papyrus, now on display at the Brooklyn Museum. The priests, often imagined as men of purely spiritual authority, were in reality landlords and bureaucrats, their divine mandate giving a religious legitimacy to their economic dominance. The system was calculated and ruthless. A farmer in debt could receive copper, grain, or seeds from the temple. The priests would smile, assuring him that the gods would provide. Yet the loans always carried interest. When a farmer could not repay, 3 grim options awaited: losing his land, entering generational debt slavery, or dedicating his daughter to the temple. The latter was presented as a blessing. In truth, it was a contract of servitude. Evidence of this practice survives in legal contracts from Deir el-Medina. Fathers' signatures, daughters' names, ages, and debt amounts are meticulously recorded. One document from the third year of Ramses IX notes that a farmer named Amemb, unable to repay 15 diban of copper, gave his 9-year-old daughter Neferti to the house of Amun for perpetual service. These girls, often starting as children, were trained extensively. They learned to read, write, perform music, calculate, and study astronomy. Some rose to positions of significant influence, becoming gods' wives, managing temple treasuries, and holding authority over resources. Yet despite their education and wealth, freedom remained a distant dream. They could order others but could not leave the temple grounds. In the 1960s, Danish archaeologist Lisa Maneka uncovered another layer of this hidden history. On shards of pottery used as makeshift notepads, she discovered medical prescriptions detailing treatments for genital trauma and instructions for midwives attending girls as young as 11 during childbirth. One note chillingly read, "For the girl who bleeds after the god's visitation." This god's visitation referred to the monthly ritual, a systematized abuse carried out under the guise of divine favor. Among these shards was a personal letter, hands trembling as the ink dried. "To my sister Mutmuya, who serves in Mut's house. I am sorry I gave you to them. I am sorry I believed the priest when he said you would be blessed. Your mother weeps every night. I cannot sleep. Forgive me." There was no reply to this letter. No comfort arrived for the girl, nor for her sister, nor for countless others. Not all women in the temples were victims. Some, like Hatshepsut, who would eventually become pharaoh, rose to power after beginning life as God's wife of Amun. But the line between victim and powerful priestess was razor-thin. Age, consent, and circumstance dictated who would wield authority and who would remain bound. Margaret Murray's jar contained 17 letters from a woman named Tentipet, who had served in the Temple of Mut for 40 years. Tentipet's letters described in detail the ritual abuse, the monthly choosing. Official temple records do not mention this practice. Tentipet wrote about being led into the inner sanctum after evening offerings, along with 4 other girls, the youngest only 8 years old. The overseer struck her for crying, declaring that tears were impurity. The high priest, wearing the mask of Amun with ram horns, claimed that the god would speak through him. The girls were told that they were blessed to receive the divine seed. Murray noted in her diary, "This describes organized abuse disguised as religious duty, scheduled and recorded like grain inventory. Names, ages, and dates were meticulously recorded. The youngest recorded participant was only 7. Tentipet was not alone. Other women's voices survived in letters hidden away, a clandestine archive of suffering. One woman wrote, "My name was Marat before they changed it. My father owed grain. The priest told him I would marry the god. I was 11. There is no god here. Only men in masks claiming to speak for gods." Another wrote, "I have served 16 years. I bore 3 children to the god. They took each one after 3 years. My eldest daughter now serves as I do. I see her in morning processions. She does not look at me. Perhaps they told her I am dead." The letters reveal an organized system of control and abuse disguised as sacred ritual, a system that balanced knowledge, wealth, and brutality in equal measure. It is a history deliberately hidden from the public, sanitized into narratives of divine glory. Yet the ancient Egyptians left clues that are only now being understood. The small handprints on plaster, the faint scratches, the hidden letters, they are the voices of those who were never allowed to speak openly. They remind us that behind every temple, behind every divine facade, were human lives, lives of children, of daughters, of women whose names were changed, whose identities were stolen, whose bodies were controlled in the name of gods and gold. Margaret Murray, after discovering the jar and reading its contents, wrote with a mix of awe and horror, "I have read things today that make me question whether I should continue in Egyptology. These were children." And indeed, these were children. Young girls, some barely 7 or 8 years old, signed away as property to temples that combined sacred ritual with economic and political power. Some became powerful, educated women, yet the majority remained voiceless victims, their suffering carefully hidden from history. The story of Karnak, the Temple of Mut, and the hidden letters reminds us of the dual nature of civilization itself. Greatness and atrocity often exist side by side. Sacredness and exploitation can intertwine in ways that confuse even the most careful observer. The monuments we marvel at today, the temples we revere, and the history we admire all carry shadows, echoes of lives lived under control, of prayers whispered in vain, of voices stifled by sacred authority. 3,000 years later, these handprints, these letters, these traces of fear and resistance remain. They remind us that history is not just about kings, pharaohs, or grandeur. It is about the ordinary people who lived, suffered, resisted, and sometimes survived despite the most powerful institutions of their time. It is about the children who cried, the women who wrote, and the silent witnesses who pressed their hands into wet plaster, hoping that somehow, someone, perhaps even a god, would hear them. Karnak stands tall today, as it always has, a testament to human ingenuity and religious devotion. But beneath its majestic pillars lies a story not of triumph, but of survival. The story of the Temple of Mut and of the girls hidden within it is a reminder that every civilization, no matter how beautiful, carries both light and darkness, and that the voices of the past, no matter how faint, still have the power to speak. The duality of ancient Egypt, the brilliance and the brutality, the sacred and the profane, is etched into every stone, every inscription, every hidden jar. History, when looked at closely, is never one-dimensional. And for those who study it carefully, the greatest lesson may be this: the glory of a civilization is inseparable from the suffering it sometimes conceals, and the echoes of the innocent can speak long after the gods have gone silent.